The morning sun had barely risen when the warrior arrived, breathing hard, steps restless, eyes flicking from tree to stone to shadow, as if hunted by his own thoughts. His armor held the marks of battles won, yet his spirit, it vibrated with unease. Strength was not his problem. Speed was not his problem. Skill was not his problem. Presence was. He moved like a man chased by invisible currents, thoughts scattering, attention slipping, breath broken into uneven fragments. Every sound startled him. Every movement demanded a reaction. He fought as one who survived on instinct rather than intention, as if his mind were a mirror cracked into 100 pieces. This is where the struggle began. The secluded dojo stood like a silent witness to his restlessness, an ancient wooden hall hidden deep within a forest that knew the taste of centuries. Inside, lanterns flickered with deliberate calm. Outside, the wind whispered against bamboo with the patience of ages. And at the center of the hall waited the master. He did not greet the warrior. He did not bow. He only watched, still, unshaken, a presence so complete that the air around him felt heavier than silence. The warrior felt a shiver run through him. This was not the weight of intimidation. It was the weight of attention, so precise it cut through his scattered thoughts like a blade. "You move fast," the mentor said at last, voice steady, eyes unblinking. "But your mind moves faster. A warrior who cannot contain his own thoughts will always lose to the one who can." The words struck harder than any blow. The mentor gestured to the center of the wooden floor. "Sit." The warrior obeyed, awkwardly, impatiently. His fingers tapped his knees. His eyes wandered to the windows. His breath rose and fell too quickly, too shallow. The mentor closed his eyes. The warrior tried to imitate him. Seconds passed, then his mind flooded with noise. His jaw tightened. His leg bounced. A faint itch on his arm became unbearable. The wind outside became distracting. The quiet became suffocating. "Focus on what?" the warrior blurted. The mentor opened his eyes. "On what is here." "I am here," the warrior snapped. "No," the mentor replied calmly. "You are everywhere except here." With that, he handed the warrior a single leaf. "Observe it." The warrior frowned. "A leaf? I came here to train, to fight, to master yourself," the mentor interrupted. "And your mind cannot hold the shape of a leaf for 3 breaths without fleeing." The warrior wanted to argue. Instead, he stared at the leaf, its veins, its edges, the tiny imperfections left by time. For a moment, the world softened into stillness. Then a sound. Someone's foot shifting, a bird calling. The creak of wood shattered his concentration. His head jerked, his grip tightened, his breath broke again. The mentor watched silently. Later came the drills, slow-motion movements, intended to tie breath to motion, motion to intention. But the warrior rushed. He anticipated. He stumbled over his own impatience. His eyes flicked to the corners of the room, preoccupied with the next movement, never the present one. When sparring began, the truth became undeniable. His sword struck with strength, yet no clarity. His stance shifted with speed, yet no stillness. When the mentor struck his blade aside with effortless ease, the warrior felt frustration burn like fire in his chest. "Why can't I focus?" the warrior growled. The mentor's gaze softened, not with pity, but with ancient understanding. "Because your mind has never been taught to be still. Skill without awareness is like a blade without a handle. You may swing it hard, but you cannot control where it cuts." Silence fell heavy between them. The warrior lowered his head, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. For the first time, he felt the gap between talent and mastery open before him like a chasm. And in that chasm waited the work ahead. The mentor led the warrior outside, where the forest breathed with early light. Mist curled between the trees like drifting thoughts, refusing to settle. The warrior followed, shoulders tight, frustration still simmering beneath his skin. "Your mind is like this fog," the mentor said, motioning to the haze. "Always moving, always reacting, never resting." "I try," the warrior muttered. "That is the problem," the mentor replied. "You try to focus. Instead, you must learn to return to focus." They reached a shallow stream, its surface trembling with the morning breeze. The mentor pointed at the water. "Stand here. Watch the current." The warrior stared, confused. "What am I looking for?" "Nothing," the mentor said, "but you will notice everything." The warrior frowned but obeyed, shifting his stance onto the stones. At first, he saw only movement. Water flashing under sunlight, leaves drifting by, ripples twisting around his ankles. His mind labeled everything instantly. Cold, fast, light, noise, movement. Thoughts poured in like a rushing river. But slowly, very slowly, another layer revealed itself. The rhythm beneath the movement, the subtle pauses, the spaces between ripples, the quiet pulse of the stream's intention. For a moment, he felt himself observing without reacting. A breath later, the moment vanished. The mentor nodded as if expecting it. Presence comes in flashes before it becomes a state. You are beginning to see the gap. The warrior's pride softened. Confusion replaced irritation. What gap? The gap between what happens and how you respond. The warrior pondered this as they walked back toward the dojo, their footsteps soft on the forest floor. Inside, the air felt different, still, like a held breath. The mentor placed a candle on the wooden floor and lit it. The flame trembled gently. "This will be your next training." The warrior's expression tightened. "Staring at fire?" "Observing fire," the mentor corrected. "Your mind wants storms, it wants noise, it wants conflict, but mastery grows in silence." The warrior sat before the flame. Minutes stretched. His eyes drifted away, his shoulders twitched, his breath stumbled. The mentor tapped his shoulder lightly. "Return." Again, the warrior tried. A creak outside. "Return." A thought about yesterday's battle. Return. A worry about the future. Return. Again and again, the mentor brought him back, not with reprimand, but with gentle, consistent guidance. The warrior didn't realize it at first, but each return strengthened something inside him, something subtle but unbreakable. After an hour, sweat beaded on his forehead, though he hadn't moved. "Why does stillness feel harder than sparring?" he whispered. "Because sparring reveals only the body," the mentor said. "Stillness reveals the mind." The day's final test came at dusk. The warrior was instructed to perform a simple kata, one he had mastered years ago, but with absolute presence. He inhaled, exhaled, lifted his blade, and halted. His movements felt heavy, unfamiliar. Each motion shook with the effort of attention. There was no momentum to rely on, no instinct to hide behind. He had to feel each step, each shift, each breath. For the first time in years, the warrior realized how many moments he had been skipping, how often he chased the end rather than inhabiting the process. When he finished, his chest was heaving. The mentor bowed to him. "Now you understand the truth." "What truth?" the warrior asked, exhausted. "That distraction is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It shows you where your mind refuses to stay, And presence, true presence, is learned one breath, one return, one moment at a time. The warrior stood in silence as night settled around the dojo. He felt tired, humbled, but also aware of the work to come, aware of the possibility ahead. The distracted warrior had taken his first step onto the ancient path. Transition. Tomorrow he will learn that presence is not stillness. It is power. Dawn rose like a quiet awakening, spreading gold across the dojo floor. The warrior stepped inside, still carrying the previous day's exhaustion. Yet beneath the fatigue lived a new awareness, faint but undeniable. He moved slower. He breathed deeper. The noise inside him had softened, though it had not yet stilled. The mentor stood at the center of the hall, hands folded behind him, posture straight as a blade left standing in the earth. "Yesterday," he said, "you saw the gap. Today, you will learn to live inside it." The warrior bowed. His throat felt tight, as if preparing for a challenge he could not predict. The mentor raised a single finger to his lips. Silence. Then the training began. They walked into the Aikenziko forest again, but this time the mentor did not speak. Instead, he led the warrior to a wide clearing where the wind wove through tall grass like invisible fingers. The world was alive with movement. Rustling leaves, distant birds, shifting shadows. Yet the mentor's presence felt as unmoving as stone. "Observe," he finally said, "not with the eyes alone, with the whole being." The warrior exhaled slowly and tried. He first noticed what anyone would notice: sound, color, motion. But the mentor's voice cut through the surface. "Do not look at the forest. Feel how the forest changes." The warrior inhaled. Wind pressure shifted. Birdsong paused. A shadow slid across the ground. A faint tremor of grass bent in a direction opposite the breeze. These were things he had seen before, but never truly registered. Presence was not passive. It was participation. "What do you sense now?" the mentor asked. The warrior swallowed. "Something just beyond the clearing. Movement?" The mentor nodded. "Presence sharpens instinct. Instinct without presence becomes fear. Instinct with presence becomes clarity." A small deer stepped from the trees, and the warrior realized he had felt it before he had seen it. A subtle change in the forest's rhythm. His breath hitched. For the first time, his awareness reached further than sight. When they returned to the dojo, the mentor placed a long wooden staff in the warrior's hands. "Movement with presence," he said. "Slow." The warrior raised the staff and began the simplest of forms, yet every action demanded full attention. Lifting the staff required breath at the base of the spine. Stepping forward required awareness of pressure beneath his foot. Turning required mindful coordination of hips, shoulders, and gaze. Where mind wandered, the staff wavered. Where attention faltered, motion collapsed. Presence was like a flame, bright when he fed it, dim when he drifted. As sweat rose on his brow, the mentor circled him quietly. "You believe presence is a moment of calm," he said. "It is not. Presence is the foundation of power. Without it, technique becomes empty. With it, even stillness becomes strength." The warrior continued the form, slower, deeper, more deliberate. He began to feel the difference. The body no longer dragged the mind, and the mind no longer raced ahead of the body. They moved together, aligned, unified. Later, the mentor blindfolded him. "Now move," he said. Fear flickered, but the instructions were clear. Trust sensation. Trust breath. Trust the subtle information the world offered. The warrior inhaled, exhaled, and stepped forward. He felt the shift of air before the mentor tapped him with the wooden cane, ducked, twisted, avoided the next strike by sensing, not seeing, the direction. His heart pounded, but his mind was steady. For the first time, presence did not feel like stillness. It felt like power. The blindfold remained over the warrior's eyes as the mentor circled him like a silent storm. Each footstep, soft as drifting ash, sent tiny vibrations through the wooden floor, barely noticeable to the untrained ear. But now the warrior felt them, not clearly, not confidently, but enough to awaken something primal and precise within him. The cane sliced through the air. The warrior leaned back just in time. A second strike came from the left. He pivoted, lifting the staff to intercept it, not by sight, but by sensing the pressure in the air a heartbeat before impact. Then a third. This one he failed to dodge. The cane tapped his ribs, sharp enough to sting. "Good," the mentor said. "Presence is not perfection. It is attention. You felt two. You missed one. Learn from all." Breath steadying, the warrior nodded beneath the blindfold. The mentor stepped back. "Now remove it." Light returned like a revelation. The dojo seemed sharper than before. Edges cleaner, shadows deeper, sounds more distinct. Presence had widened the warrior's perception, allowing him to see more than just the obvious. The world was no longer a blur of events. It was a pattern, a living map of information. The mentor lit a single stick of incense and placed it on the ground. "You will follow the trail of smoke," he said. The warrior frowned. "It moves randomly." "No," the mentor replied. "It moves according to forces you ignore." The warrior knelt, studying the faint grey tendril rising into the air, wavering with every whisper of movement. Slowly, he noticed the alterations. The way his own breath pulled the smoke toward him, the way a shift in his posture disturbed the air, the way even a distant draft changed the flow. The smoke was not chaos. It was a language. Presence allowed him to read it. "Again," the mentor said. "Move your hand through the smoke without disturbing it." The warrior extended his hand. Too fast. The smoke broke apart. "Slower," the mentor whispered. He tried again, this time aware of the space between his hand and the air it displaced. He felt the smoke before touching it. He felt its softness, its fragility. He moved like a whisper, and for a moment the trail remained unbroken. "What changed?" the mentor asked. "My mind," the warrior answered softly. "I wasn't trying to complete the task. I was listening to the moment." A faint smile touched the mentor's lips. Presence transforms effort into precision. The next exercise took place outside, beneath the tall cedar trees. The mentor instructed the warrior to walk across a narrow wooden beam, but with a twist. He had to match his breath to every step. Step, inhale, step, exhale, step, inhale, step, exhale. At first, the warrior's balance wavered, his feet unsure. His thoughts raced ahead. What if he fell? What if he misstepped? What did the mentor think? Each thought made the beam tremble beneath him. The mentor waited until the frustration returned to the warrior's face. Then he said only 2 words. "Return here." The warrior inhaled, felt the cool air expand his ribs, felt the wood beneath his foot, felt the world narrow into a single point of balanced awareness. With presence restored, the beam became steady. He walked the entire length without falling. As twilight descended, The warrior sat beside the mentor under the fading sky. Fireflies blinked softly, like signals in the growing dark. Neither spoke for several minutes. Presence was no longer an exercise. It became an atmosphere between them. Finally, the mentor said, "When you are fully present, the world does not control you. You move with intention, not reaction. Distraction cannot enter where awareness is complete." The warrior felt a shift inside, a quiet confidence, not born from strength, but from clarity. He looked at his hands, his breath, the still world around him. For the first time, he understood presence was the weapon that made all others effective. Transition. Tomorrow, he will learn that awareness alone is not enough. Fear will test the strength of his presence. Before sunrise, the mentor woke the warrior with a single knock. No words, no explanation, only a gesture toward the door and the faintest hint of urgency in his eyes. The air outside was colder than usual, sharp enough to bite at the warrior's lungs. Mist clung low to the ground, and the sky was still a deep, unbroken blue. The forest seemed asleep, yet something in its silence felt taut, expectant. "Today," the mentor said, "you will meet the part of yourself you avoid." The warrior stiffened. "What part is that?" The mentor's gaze held steady. "The part that trembles." They walked deeper into the forest until they reached an open circle of flattened earth. Marks scarred the ground. Footprints, broken twigs, deep grooves left from past trials. The warrior recognized the place. This was where students before him confronted their fears, where discipline met doubt. A shiver slid through him. The mentor handed him a wooden sword. "Your task is simple," he said. "Remain present." The warrior frowned. "During what?" The mentor stepped back into the shadow of the trees, disappearing from sight. His voice drifted out like a whisper carried by wind. "Whatever comes." The forest grew painfully quiet. Too quiet. The warrior lifted the sword, muscles coiling. Every snap of a twig, every shift of wind made his heart pound harder. His breath shortened. His mind raced with invisible threats. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the clearing. A branch cracked behind him. He spun, raising the blade. Nothing. Another crack. Another turn. Still nothing. Fear crept through him, not from danger itself, but from the unknown. Presence fractured under pressure, replaced by raw instinct and spiraling thought. He knew the mentor was watching. He could feel it, but he couldn't locate him. The uncertainty ate at him. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the morning cold. Then, movement. A blur burst from the trees. The warrior reacted too late. A wooden staff slammed into his shoulder. Pain flashed down his arm. He staggered, gasp caught in his throat. Before he could recover, another strike came from the opposite side. He dropped into a defensive stance, panting. "Your fear narrows your vision," the mentor's voice echoed from the darkness. "Fear makes you chase shadows instead of sensing truth." Another attack, another miss. The warrior spun wildly, reacting to the noise rather than the intention. His breath spiraled out of control. He felt himself slipping into panic, into instinct, into the very distraction he'd trained to escape. His world shrank into a storm of adrenaline and guesswork. "Return to presence," the mentor called. But the warrior couldn't hear the words over his own racing heartbeat. A final strike swept his legs out from beneath him, sending him crashing to the ground. Dust rose around him like smoke. He lay there, chest heaving, gripping the wooden sword with trembling fingers. The mentor emerged from the trees, expression unreadable. Stand. The warrior forced himself upright, humiliation burning through him. You let fear control your senses, the mentor said. But fear is not the enemy. Fear is a mirror. It reflects the places where your presence breaks. The warrior clenched his jaw. I felt powerless. Good, the mentor replied. Power is born from understanding, not denial. Now you will face fear again, but this time, not with the instinct to fight, but with the intention to observe. Before the warrior could respond, the mentor raised his staff, positioning it behind his back. The clearing grew silent again. Too silent. The trial was far from over. The mentor's silhouette blended with the shadows, his staff resting lightly in his hand. But the warrior felt the pressure in the air shift, subtle, like the charging of an unseen storm. Again, the mentor said. The word echoed through the clearing. This time the warrior did not raise his sword in panic. Instead, he breathed, slow, deliberate, letting the cold air move through him. His heartbeat was still fast, but now he noticed it instead of being ruled by it. His senses reached outward, not wildly, but intentionally. A strike came, not from noise, not from sight, but from a faint displacement of wind. The warrior pivoted and blocked, barely, but enough. The staff clashed against his wooden blade, vibrating through his arms. Better, the mentor said, his tone unreadable. Another attack followed, this one from behind. The warrior didn't guess, he sensed. A shift in the ground, a whisper of footfall, a subtle change in pressure. He ducked beneath the strike, breath steady, mind focused. Fear still lived in him, but it no longer blinded. You are learning, the mentor said. But the next tests were harsher. The mentor moved faster now, forcing presence to battle instinct. At times, the warrior succeeded, deflecting strikes not by thinking, but by listening with his entire being. At other times, fear surged, and he faltered, taking blows to the ribs, the thigh, the shoulder. Each impact became a lesson. Fear tightened his body. Presence loosened it. Fear narrowed his awareness. Presence expanded it. Fear rushed. Presence responded. Halfway through the trial, the warrior stumbled, pain flaring through his leg. Instead of rising immediately, he froze, caught between action and hesitation. The mentor's staff touched the center of his chest, not harshly, but firmly. What do you feel? The mentor asked. The warrior swallowed. Fear and frustration. What else? The mentor pressed. The warrior closed his eyes. Under the pain, under the adrenaline, under the instinct to defend, he found something else. A tremble, a memory, a familiar sense of inadequacy he had carried since childhood, when failure felt like identity. I feel unworthy, he whispered. The mentor nodded. Fear often hides as many things. Doubt, ego, shame. But when you stare into it directly, it reveals its true form. He pulled the staff back. Stand. Look into the mirror again. The warrior forced himself up. His legs shook, but his breath steadied them. What followed was different from combat. The mentor approached slowly, deliberately, making no effort to hide his movement. This time, he struck not to surprise the warrior, but to provoke fear deliberately, raising the staff high, lowering it, circling him, testing reactions. The warrior's fear rose and fell like waves, but he did not run from it. He studied it, noticed the rising tension in his stomach, noticed the way his breath shortened, noticed the flicker of anticipation before each attack. Fear became predictable. Fear became readable. Fear became a tool. When the next strike came, The warrior didn't dodge out of panic. He simply moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just present. A gentle shift of the feet, a rotation of the hips, a measured block. The clearing fell still. The mentor lowered his staff, eyes gleaming with approval. You have begun to understand. The warrior's chest rose and fell as the realization settled in him. Fear was never the enemy. Fear was information, raw, honest, revealing. Fear exposes the cracks in presence, the mentor said softly. Once you see the cracks, you can strengthen them. The warrior bowed deeply, more grounded than he had ever felt. The mentor stepped aside, gesturing toward the path leading back to the dojo. Come, he said. Tomorrow you will learn the forge where focus becomes unbreakable. Transition. The warrior walks toward the rising sun, ready to enter the discipline that will shape his presence into true mastery. The forest was silent except for the rhythmic crunch of the warrior's footsteps on the gravel path. Each step fell in measured time with his breath, a conscious act of alignment. The lessons of presence and fear lingered in his mind like embers, warming the space between awareness and action. Yet the mentor's words echoed louder. Understanding is nothing without practice. Presence is nothing without discipline. The dojo loomed ahead, its wooden walls weathered by decades of storms and sun. Inside, the familiar scent of aged timber and incense filled the air, anchoring him in the present moment. The mentor awaited, arms folded, eyes scanning the warrior as though measuring an invisible pulse beneath his skin. Today, the mentor said, you will learn repetition, not as monotony, but as transformation. He handed the warrior a wooden staff, heavy and unyielding. Every motion is an opportunity. Every breath is a chance to refine. You will repeat until movement becomes thoughtless and thought becomes presence. The warrior lifted the staff, muscles coiling. He had performed these techniques countless times before, yet now they demanded more than memory. They demanded attention. His first swing was precise but mechanical. His body moved, but his mind wandered. Each time he struck, the mentor's gaze reminded him that error was not failure, but revelation. Faster, the mentor commanded. The warrior obeyed, then stumbled, limbs trembling from exertion. Sweat mingled with the dust on the floor, dripping into the grain of the wood. Pain whispered in his shoulders, in his wrists, in the soles of his feet. And yet, each strike, each block, each deliberate footstep carried a subtle change. Awareness crept into the corners of his body he had forgotten, integrating muscles, breath, and intention. The day stretched like a slow river. Hours passed, yet the warrior barely noticed. Time became irrelevant. Only motion remained, only repetition. The air itself seemed to pulse with rhythm, echoing the relentless cadence of his training. The mentor moved silently beside him, occasionally correcting a stance or shifting a hand, but mostly observing, allowing the warrior to discover the hidden cracks in his focus. At midday, the warrior collapsed briefly onto the floor, chest heaving. His mind, previously restless, now hummed with concentrated energy. Each repetition had burned away distraction, sharpening not just skill, but awareness. He realized that mastery was not an instant revelation, but a gradual accumulation of disciplined effort. Your ego resists this, the mentor said, watching him carefully. It seeks shortcuts, praise, immediate victory. Discipline is forged where your desire for ease is strongest. The warrior clenched his fists, acknowledging the truth in silence. Each repetition was a confrontation, not with a foe outside, but with the mind inside. Each swing of the staff, each stance, each mindful breath stripped away the illusion of skill without effort. Fatigue became a teacher, monotony became a forge, and resistance became the anvil upon which focus was hammered into the body and spirit. As twilight approached, the warrior moved through the final set of exercises. Hands and feet coordinated with a clarity he had never known, breath syncing effortlessly with motion. Even when the mentor introduced duress, random strikes, shifting targets, sudden adjustments, the warrior responded with precise instinct, attention no longer fractured by doubt or impatience. When the practice ended, he lowered the staff, legs trembling, sweat-drenched and exhausted, but not defeated. For the first time, discipline did not feel like a burden. It felt like liberation. Strength had emerged not from heroics or talent, but from relentless, deliberate action, repeated until intention became instinct, and instinct became unshakable presence. The mentor studied him, expression unreadable but satisfied. "You are beginning to see," he said. "Discipline is not external. It flows from within, and from within it cannot be broken." The warrior exhaled, feeling the quiet power settling into every fiber of his being. Night fell over the dojo, shadows stretching like whispered secrets across the floor. The warrior remained, staff in hand, moving through his forms with steady breath and deliberate attention. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, but inside, nothing could disturb the rhythm he had built. Each motion flowed seamlessly into the next. Hesitation had been replaced by instinct, distraction by deliberate focus. The mentor approached, voice calm yet carrying weight. "You feel fatigue, yes? Yet your mind is quieter than it has ever been. This is no coincidence. Discipline does not seek comfort, it seeks mastery. And mastery is forged where comfort ends." The warrior nodded. He realized that every repetition had not just strengthened his body, but had reshaped his perception. He could feel the precise alignment of his spine, the subtle engagement of his core, the gentle coordination of wrist, shoulder, and elbow. Every movement was a signal sent through a network of awareness he had never known existed. His body had become an instrument of attention. "Now," the mentor continued, "we test your integration. Movement, breath, and awareness must unify under pressure." The mentor arranged a series of challenges: rapid strikes, unpredictable angles, sudden shifts. Each required instant response, yet the warrior's reactions were no longer frantic. His mind observed, his body followed, and presence bridged the gap between intention and action. He parried, ducked, and countered with a calm decisiveness that astonished even him. Where fear might have triggered panic yesterday, now it sharpened his senses. Where ego might have sought to dominate, now it served only to guide him. Hours blurred, motion repeated, tested, refined. Each failure revealed a hidden flaw. Each success confirmed a subtle shift in alignment between mind, body, and spirit. Discipline, the mentor had said, was the crucible of mastery. And in this crucible, the warrior felt the transformation, not sudden, not spectacular, but deep and undeniable. By the time the candles flickered low, casting long, dancing shadows, the warrior could move through the entire sequence without thought. Attention had become effortless. Breath, posture, and intent were no longer separate. They were one. The staff felt like an extension of his will, the dojo a sacred space where chaos could not enter. The mentor finally stepped forward. "You see now," he said softly, "that mastery is not found in brilliance nor in natural talent. It is found in the accumulation of deliberate, repeated action. Fearless focus is born where repetition meets presence. Without this, even the sharpest blade is dull. Even the strongest arm is weak." The warrior exhaled, understanding the quiet power in those words. He realized that true skill was never in a single moment of heroism. It was in the thousand small, often unseen moments where intention met action without distraction. The dojo, the staff, the movements, all became conduits of disciplined presence. The mentor's gaze softened. "Tomorrow, you will confront another obstacle, the ego that seeks to undo the progress you have made. Be ready. Discipline will be tested not just in movement, but in humility." The warrior bowed deeply, acknowledging both the lesson and the path ahead. For the first time, he felt the profound difference between doing and being. Discipline was no longer a burden, nor a chore. It was a current flowing through him, steady, unyielding, and unbreakable. And as he left the dojo, night wrapping the forest in quiet shadow, he felt the truth settle into his bones. Mastery is forged not in grand gestures, but in relentless, deliberate repetition. Transition. The next challenge awaits. The ego, subtle and persistent, now comes to test whether discipline alone can sustain fearless focus. The next morning, the warrior entered the dojo with a strange mix of confidence and unease. The past days had sharpened his senses, honed his presence, and tempered his fear. Yet he sensed something unspoken in the air, a quiet weight pressing against his chest. The mentor stood at the center, unmoving, as if already aware of the inner turbulence he had yet to face. "Discipline and presence are not enough," the mentor began, voice calm but firm. "They will carry you far, but only until the ego intervenes." The warrior frowned. Ego? The subtle self that claims credit, the whisper that says you are superior, the shadow that distorts perception. It is invisible, yet its power is immense. It hides behind pride, vanity, and the desire for recognition, and it will undo all you have learned if left unchecked. The warrior's heart thumped. He had trained for fear, for distraction, for exhaustion, but never for the reflection of himself. He looked inward and realized with a sting how often he had acted for applause, for approval, for the fleeting satisfaction of being right. The mentor gestured toward the wooden floor. "Today, you will spar with me, but not to win. You will lose deliberately at times, fail intentionally, confront your own desire for control." The warrior's brow furrowed. "Intentionally lose? How does that teach mastery?" "It teaches humility," the mentor replied. "And humility is the handmaiden of focus. When you cling to pride, attention falters. When you release it, presence expands." They assumed positions. The wooden swords lifted, eyes locking. Each strike was deliberate, controlled. Yet, unlike previous drills, the warrior had to restrain his instinct to dominate. Each time he sensed an opportunity to overpower the mentor, he deliberately held back, forcing himself to accept vulnerability. The mentor's strikes came, precise and unrelenting. The warrior blocked, countered, then allowed himself to be disarmed. Frustration surged, not from fear or fatigue, but from the bruising sting of ego. It whispered, "You are better than this. You should not fail." The warrior recognized the voice and met it with awareness instead of reaction. "You resist failure," the mentor observed, "and that resistance is your ego. See it. Do not fight it. Witness it, Let it pass and continue. Over and over the exercise tested him. Victory slipped through his fingers, not because of weakness, but because he allowed it. Pride burned, impatience flared, self-importance tightened like chains around his mind. And yet, each moment he returned to presence, observing the ego without letting it dictate action, a subtle shift occurred. After hours of practice, sweat and dust coating his skin, the mentor called a pause. The ego is persistent, he said. It thrives on recognition, on comparison, on the illusion of control. To master focus, you must transform it, from master into servant. Only then will your actions arise from clarity, not desire. The warrior lowered his gaze, absorbing the weight of the lesson. He realized how often he had moved through life chasing validation, letting pride dictate decisions, allowing distraction and fear to hide behind the glow of recognition. True mastery demanded release, a detachment that did not diminish skill, but amplified presence. The afternoon sun poured through the open windows, illuminating the dust in the air like golden motes of truth. The warrior sat on the wooden floor, breathing steadily, letting the lesson sink into bone and muscle. He had faced fear outside himself. Now he faced the storm within. The first stirrings of humility emerged. Not weakness, not resignation, but a quiet, grounded awareness that his mind, body, and spirit could move as one when freed from the subtle chains of ego. As twilight approached, the mentor led the warrior outside to the forest clearing, the same place where fear had first been revealed to him. Shadows stretched long, merging with the darkening mist. Tonight, the test was not physical, but internal, a confrontation with the ego that had quietly steered his thoughts and actions for years. Walk, the mentor instructed, but with awareness of every impulse that rises. Notice pride, notice judgment, notice the desire to appear strong or capable. These are the chains of ego. The warrior stepped forward. Each footfall was deliberate, yet with every movement, whispers of self-importance flickered in his mind. You are strong. You are skilled. You should be faster. You should be better. In the past, such thoughts had propelled him, spurred him to action. Now the mentor's guidance forced him to pause, to observe, to let each impulse pass without attachment. A sudden challenge appeared. A low branch swung toward him, a small hazard designed not to harm, but to provoke reaction. Instinct demanded to duck, to strike, to assert control. The warrior froze, taking the branch lightly on his shoulder, acknowledging the impulse to fight rather than acting. The sting was sharp, but it was also illuminating. Ego thrived on reaction. Presence thrived on observation. You feel the urge to defend yourself, to prove your worth, the mentor's voice echoed. This is ego. Recognize it, and it loses its power. As night deepened, the warrior moved through a series of exercises designed to provoke subtle pride, simulated duels, mirrored movements, tasks where skill alone could not ensure success. Each challenge tested patience, humility, and attentiveness. The warrior learned to accept error gracefully, to act without expectation, to let action arise from presence instead of self-interest. Between exercises, they sat in silence, the cool night air carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The mentor said, "The ego wants recognition. It wants to shine in your absence, to dictate even your smallest choices. Discipline and presence can restrain it, but only humility can dissolve its grip." The warrior inhaled deeply, feeling the echo of this truth in his bones. He understood now that mastery was not about dominating the external world, but mastering the internal one. Ego was not an enemy to be destroyed. It was a mirror, reflecting the moments where focus faltered, where intention became clouded, where fear found purchase. He recalled the early days of training, the leaf, the stream, the smoke, the blindfold. Each exercise had built presence, tempered fear, and sharpened discipline. Now, confronting ego, he realized the culmination of those lessons. Fear could be observed, distraction could be returned to focus, and ego. Ego could be recognized and released, transforming from a tyrant into a guide. Hours passed. The warrior's movements became quiet, precise, and deliberate. Every swing, every step, every breath carried intent without attachment. The urge to claim victory, to assert superiority, or to measure himself against the mentor had dissolved. In its place was clarity, a focused, unshakable presence that flowed effortlessly from mind to body to spirit. The mentor finally lowered his gaze, a faint nod signaling the completion of the trial. "You have glimpsed the truth," he said. "Ego is neither enemy nor friend. It is a teacher, and when observed without attachment, it strengthens focus rather than diminishes it." The warrior exhaled, feeling a profound calm settle into him. The reflections of fear, presence, and repetition had converged. What remained was the integration of all lessons. Discipline married to humility, skill anchored in awareness, and intention freed from self-interest. As he rose and looked toward the horizon, the first hints of dawn touched the treetops. Tomorrow, he would face the final trial, a culmination of everything he had learned. Fear, distraction, and ego would converge, demanding a fearless focus that could not be shaken. Transition. The warrior steps into the dawn, ready to embody the Zanshin path fully, where presence, discipline, and ego unite to forge unbreakable focus. Dawn broke slowly, spilling pale gold across the forest clearing. Mist lingered, curling around tree trunks like whispers from a forgotten past. The warrior stood at the center, staff in hand, chest rising and falling in measured rhythm. Every muscle, every nerve, every breath aligned, not by thought, but by habit, discipline, and awareness. He had walked through distraction, fear, repetition, and ego. Today, all paths converged. The mentor appeared silently at the edge of the clearing, staff resting lightly in his hands, eyes calm yet piercing. No words were spoken, none were needed. The challenge awaited, complex, unpredictable, and designed to test whether the lessons of presence, fear, discipline, and humility could be embodied as unshakable focus. Suddenly, movement exploded around him. Shadows shifted like living shapes. The mentor struck first, fast, probing, testing instinct. The warrior reacted, not hastily, not frantically, but precisely, with full awareness. Each block, each parry, each step arose naturally, effortlessly. Presence guided him. Ego remained subdued. Fear did not vanish. It whispered, and he listened, letting it refine his awareness instead of shattering it. A second strike, a feint followed by a real attack. The warrior moved before his mind fully registered, every motion flowing from a state of quiet observation. Muscle memory, disciplined repetition, and the internalized rhythm of breath fused into instinct. Mist, light, and shadow became allies, signals to be read, not obstacles to fear. The mentor's assault intensified. He varied speed, angle, and timing, each strike a deliberate attempt to unseat the warrior's attention. Yet nothing rattled him, Even when caught, slightly off guard, he recovered instantly, drawing from the deep reservoir of calm cultivated through weeks of patient, relentless practice. Every hit avoided, every motion precise, revealed not just skill, but the invisible alignment of mind, body, and spirit. Sweat dripped, muscles burned, yet focus remained unbroken. The warrior felt the culmination of every lesson. Fear had taught him awareness. Repetition had forged discipline. Ego had revealed humility, and presence had become a weapon. Each element intertwined, flowing seamlessly into action, creating a state of unshakable clarity. The mentor paused briefly, observing. "This is not perfection," he said quietly, "but it is mastery in motion. Fear is not eliminated, ego is not conquered, distraction is not absent, yet none hold power over you." The warrior understood. Focus was not fragile, it was fearless. It did not arise from the absence of obstacles, but from the full integration of mind, body, and spirit in the face of them. The forest, the mist, the morning light, all were a stage, a teacher, and an ally. The warrior moved with a calm authority that seemed effortless, yet was earned through sweat, pain, and unrelenting attention. Times stretched and compressed. The duel became a dance of subtle shifts, each movement precise, each breath intentional. There was no room for arrogance, no space for doubt, no allowance for distraction. Every action was deliberate, every intention clear. The warrior had become the embodiment of the Zanshin Method, presence that anchored, discipline that sustained, and mind sharpened into a fearless weapon. Finally, the mentor stepped back completely, staff lowered. Silence descended like a mantle over the clearing. The warrior stood alone, chest heaving, every nerve alive, yet every thought quiet. The world seemed sharper, yet softer, brighter, yet calm. Fear, ego, distraction, all had been integrated, observed, and transformed into clarity. He breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of life itself pulsing through him. For the first time, focus was not something to achieve. It was the ground upon which he stood, unshakable, precise, and free. The forest held its breath as the warrior lowered his staff. Mist wove between the trees, and the rising sun painted the world in shades of gold and amber. Every sound, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of leaves, the shifting earth beneath his feet, was sharp, yet he was not overwhelmed. He was alive to each sensation, yet untouched by distraction. This was the culmination of weeks, perhaps years, of inner trials. The mentor stepped forward, voice calm, almost reverent. "You have arrived at the threshold. The trials are complete, but mastery is not a destination. It is a living, breathing state. Today, you embody it." The warrior exhaled slowly, realizing the truth of the words. Every strike, every block, every pivot had been a thread, weaving into a tapestry of unbroken attention. His fear was acknowledged, his ego subdued, his presence total. The chaos of the external world was no longer an enemy. It was a partner, offering signals, opportunities, and reflection. The mentor gestured to the clearing. "Now, step forward and face the final challenge. Not me, not the environment, but yourself. Observe every thought, every impulse, every flicker of fear. Respond not out of reaction, but intention." The warrior inhaled, feeling the pulse of life in his veins, the rhythm of breath in his chest, the alignment of body and mind. For a moment, the world contracted to a single point of awareness, his own presence in the infinite. No distraction could penetrate, no fear could dictate. Every movement, from the subtle shift of a foot to the rotation of his staff, flowed naturally, effortlessly, as if the universe itself guided his actions. A gust of wind passed through the clearing, and for the first time he felt fear not as paralysis, but as clarity. The slightest disturbance in the air, the hint of shadow, the tremor of a leaf, all became information. His mind did not chase or resist. It simply observed and acted with precision. Fear was no longer an enemy. It was a lens, revealing the hidden currents of the present moment. He moved through the sequence of exercises one final time, each motion a manifestation of the lessons learned. Repetition had forged discipline, fear had revealed focus, ego had been tempered by humility, and presence had become instinct. The rhythm was unbroken. His breath, body, and mind were a single instrument, producing the melody of fearless action. The mentor finally lowered his gaze, allowing a rare smile. You are aligned. You have transformed the ordinary mind into an unshakable weapon of clarity. You have turned fear into guidance, distraction into focus, and discipline into effortless strength. This is the essence of Zanshin. The warrior felt a profound calm settle through him, deeper than exhaustion, stronger than pride. He understood that fearless focus was not about eliminating challenges or suppressing emotions. It was about total alignment, a deliberate and practiced state of presence that allowed mind, body, and spirit to act as one. The forest, the dojo, the wind, and the light all had become extensions of this clarity. As the first rays of the sun kissed the treetops, the warrior lowered his staff and stood tall, fully aware, fully present. He was no longer a man scattered by fear, ego, or distraction. He was a vessel of unbroken attention, a living embodiment of the ancient Zanshin path. In that quiet dawn, he realized the ultimate truth. Mastery is not a moment, nor a skill. It is the alignment of all things within, the fearless focus that endures under all conditions.